Number 11. AMC Gremlin, 1970 to 1978. American Motors built the Gremlin by shortening an existing Hornet platform under cost and schedule pressure that were both visible in the ownership experience. The shortened chassis transmitted road imperfections in ways that reflected how quickly the platform had been adapted for its new proportions. Build quality varied between units in ways that owners documented consistently. Panel gaps, interior trim retention, and early onset rust in the lower body and floor sections. The base inline-six produced adequate power in a car whose handling reflected the compromises of its shortened platform. The Gremlin sold in large numbers for 8 years because the price was right and the alternatives for economy-minded buyers were limited, not because the car justified the purchase on its own merits. It ranks at number 11 because its compromises reflected the broader quality and engineering limitations facing American compact cars of the era, visible in every rust-prone rocker panel and every dealer visit on a car that Japan was already proving did not have to be this way. Number 10. Ford Maverick, 1970 to 1977. The Ford Maverick was developed on a timeline that prioritized market presence over product quality, and the ownership record that followed reflected that priority with more consistency than Ford's marketing had prepared buyers to expect. Ford introduced the Maverick in 1970 as a direct counter to the import segment growth that was visibly accelerating in American showrooms. The engineering was borrowed from existing platforms, and the development schedule was compressed, and the car that emerged occupied a competitive position it could not reliably sustain against increasingly capable Japanese alternatives. Rust appeared in the lower body, rocker panels, and floor sections ahead of any reasonable expectation for a car its age. Build quality varied enough between production units that individual ownership experiences diverged significantly. The handling reflected the compromises of a platform adapted from existing Ford engineering rather than developed specifically for the segment. The Maverick sold in volume throughout its production run, proof that price remains a powerful advantage even when the product cannot match the competition in quality, refinement, or durability. The buyers who chose it on price absorbed those consequences over the ownership years that followed. Number 9. Bricklin SV1, 1974 to 1975. The Bricklin SV1 was marketed on a premise that should have been its greatest strength and became its most specific failure, that it was the safe sports car. Safety was not incidental to the Bricklin's identity, it was the product's entire commercial proposition. Malcolm Bricklin brought the SV1 to market in 1974 through a government-backed manufacturing arrangement in New Brunswick, Canada. The gull-wing doors operated through a hydraulic and electric system designed to open and close at the touch of a control. In practice, the system failed frequently enough that owners and passengers could find themselves in a vehicle they could not exit under their own power from the inside, a failure mode whose irony, given the car's safety positioning, was not lost on the automotive press. The fiberglass acrylic composite body was visually distinctive and mechanically difficult to repair at any dealership outside the thin network that had been established to support the car. Build quality was inconsistent across the approximately 2,900 units produced before the company collapsed in 1975. The SV1 did not fail because its concept was wrong. It failed because the execution could not support the concept, and the concept was the one thing the car had been built around.
Number 8. Ford Mustang II, 1974 to 1978. The Ford Mustang II became one of the decade's most controversial reinterpretations of an established performance nameplate, succeeding commercially while generating lasting debate about what the name should have represented. Ford justified the Mustang II's smaller size as a response to the 1973 oil crisis, and that justification was not entirely dishonest. A smaller, lighter Mustang was a defensible response to a changed market. What was harder to defend was building it on the Pinto platform, sharing its engineering with a car whose own record would become one of the decade's most examined failures. The base four-cylinder produced outputs that made the Mustang name feel like a licensing decision rather than a performance statement. The handling reflected a platform designed for economy transportation, not the sporting character the badge continued to imply. The Mustang II sold in significant numbers precisely because the name carried buyers to showrooms where a different kind of car was waiting. Ford spent much of the 1980s rebuilding the credibility that 4 years of the Mustang II had spent down, which is, in its own way, the most precise measure of what the Mustang II cost the brand. Number 7. Chrysler Cordoba, 1975 to 1983. The Chrysler Cordoba is remembered primarily for Ricardo Montalban and fine Corinthian leather, an advertising campaign so effective that it became the car's defining cultural artifact, which is exactly the problem. The marketing was more durable than the product. The Cordoba arrived in 1975 as Chrysler's entry into the personal luxury segment, a category dominated by the Ford Thunderbird and the Buick Riviera, where buyers expected a specific combination of refinement, reliability, and brand prestige. The 360 cubic inch V8 offered adequate performance by the standards of an emissions-constrained decade, but the supporting systems introduced ownership complications that the advertising had not prepared buyers for. Owners and period reports documented recurring complaints involving electrical systems and build quality. Fit and finish varied in ways that the car's price bracket made difficult to accept. Panel gaps, interior trim, and paint consistency fell short of personal luxury expectations. The Cordoba sold well on the strength of its marketing, but its long-term ownership reputation never fully matched the campaign's promise. The gap between the Cordoba's image and its documented quality record is what places it here. Number 6. AMC Pacer, 1975 to 1980. The AMC Pacer arrived in 1975, having been designed around an engine that General Motors had canceled before the Pacer reached production, a circumstance that shaped every significant problem the car carried through its production run. AMC had designed the Pacer's dimensions and weight distribution around a Wankel rotary engine that GM was developing and then withdrew. When that engine disappeared, AMC substituted the inline-six it had available, and the mismatch between the car's architecture and its substitute powertrain defined the ownership experience. The Pacer was wider than any American subcompact of its era, a proportioning that made sense with the rotary's packaging and created a fuel economy penalty with the heavier six that buyers focused on efficiency found difficult to justify. The large glass surfaces that gave the car its visual character created thermal management and sealing issues that owners documented in service records across the production run. Build quality complaints were consistent. AMC marketed the Pacer on innovation. What buyers received was the consequence of building a car around an assumption that had been invalidated before the tooling was finished.
Number 5. Oldsmobile Diesel, 1977 to 1985. The Oldsmobile Diesel was not designed as a diesel. That single fact explains more about its reliability record than any technical analysis of its individual failure modes. The engine was heavily derived from an existing Oldsmobile gasoline V8 architecture deployed in diesel application without the fundamental redesign that a true diesel platform requires. The head bolt architecture was not built for diesel compression ratios under sustained use. The engine's sensitivity to water contamination in diesel fuel, a routine occurrence in the American supply infrastructure of the late 1970s, caused internal damage that the design was not built to survive. Owners who maintained the car with the care that standard gasoline vehicles required found that the diesel demanded more, and discovered that distinction through repair bills rather than documentation that Oldsmobile had provided. Number 4. Ford Thunderbird, 1972 to 1976. The Ford Thunderbird had spent 15 years drifting from the two-seat sports car that launched it in 1955 toward the personal luxury category that American buyers demonstrated they wanted in larger numbers. By the 1972 generation, the drift was complete. and the result raised specific questions about what the transformation had cost in terms of reliability and engineering integrity. The 1972 to 1976 Thunderbird carried a 460 cubic inch V8 whose output the emissions era steadily eroded in a body whose weight had grown with every redesign. Electrical complaints were chronic. Window regulators, instrument clusters, and lighting required repeated dealer visits without permanent resolution. Cooling system reliability drew complaints at mileages buyers considered premature. The personal luxury segment demanded a specific ownership experience, one in which problems were infrequent, dealer visits were rare, and the car operated with the quiet dependability its price implied. Period ownership reports and reliability data suggested that the Thunderbird's ownership experience often fell short of luxury car expectations. The transformation from sports car to luxury cruiser was commercially successful. The reliability record of what resulted was not. Number 3. Lincoln Versailles, 1977 to 1980. The Lincoln Versailles is the 1970s entry in a specific category of automotive failure, the luxury rebadge, in which a manufacturer attaches a premium name to a product whose underlying engineering cannot support the premium the name commands. The Versailles was a Grenada, a mid-size Ford compact fitted with Lincoln badges, a vinyl roof, and the kind of interior appointments that the price difference between a Grenada and a Versailles was supposed to justify. That price difference reached several $1,000s. The mechanical content beneath the Lincoln badge was identical to the Grenada, the same powertrain, the same platform, the same fundamental engineering. The additional features Versailles buyers received were cosmetic rather than structural. Period road tests identified the Grenada relationship and documented the gap between what the Lincoln badge implied and what the mechanicals delivered. Buyers who paid Lincoln prices received a driving and ownership experience that remained fundamentally tied to the Ford Grenada underneath, not what a four-figure premium was supposed to purchase. The Versailles was discontinued in 1980, a commercial result that reflected the gap between what the Lincoln name implied and what the product delivered.
Number 2. Cadillac Eldorado, 2071 to 1978. The Cadillac Eldorado of the early 1970s was genuinely innovative. A front-wheel drive personal luxury car of considerable size that demonstrated what American engineering could attempt when the constraints were commercial ambition rather than regulatory compliance. It was also a car whose ownership record introduced problems that Cadillac buyers at that price point had not been asked to tolerate before. The 500 cubic inch V8 powered a front-wheel drive platform whose complexity created service and durability challenges dealers documented consistently. Owners and period reports documented recurring complaints involving transmission durability, electrical systems, and the complexity of servicing the front-wheel drive layout. Buyers at Cadillac prices often considered those maintenance demands inconsistent with what the badge was supposed to guarantee. Overall ownership complexity fell short of the standard Cadillac's reputation had established. Number 1. Ford Pinto, 1970 to 1980. The Pinto was developed in under 25 months. The fuel tank, positioned between the rear bumper and rear axle with limited structural protection, was documented to be vulnerable to puncture and fire in specific rear impact scenarios. An internal Ford analysis, the Grimshaw memo made public through civil litigation, compared the per-unit cost of a design fix against projected settlement costs for anticipated deaths and injuries. The fix was not made. Ford recalled approximately 1.5 million Pintos in 1978 and was indicted in Indiana on reckless homicide charges. The Pinto is at number 1 because the 1970s produced many cars that failed their owners. Only one of them produced a paper trail showing that the failure had been calculated, assigned a dollar value, and allowed to proceed.